After the massive success of 2023's Godzilla Minus One, Toho has just officially announced that they are entering into production on a follow-up. The new film is going to have Takashi Yamazaki return, who is coming back after having directed and delivered what I personally consider to be one of the greatest Godzilla movies of all time, and my favorite movie from last year. Now, he's also going to be coming back working on the VFX after winning the Oscar for Best Visual Effects with that film, so this is a very big deal. So after winning the Oscar for Best Visual Effects at the 96th Academy Awards and giving the world one of the most popular and successful Godzilla films of all time, Toho is moving forward with a follow-up. In the past, producer Minami Ichikawa said that the company was looking for, quote, great ideas, an excellent script, a talented director, and the right cast to work on it carefully. And it looks like in the very least, they've got Takashi Yamazaki they can count on. Now, he has said that he is very excited to begin working on this project, but just to be clear, there's no concrete information stating that this will be an actual sequel to Minus One just yet. Personally, I actually do think that this is where they will go, just based off of what previous reports for the film have been saying, and I think Takashi Yamazaki actually really does want to make a Godzilla Minus Two or Minus One Part 2 based off of his own previous quotes. For example, look, there's a lot of the cast from Godzilla Minus One expressing interest in returning for the sequel, and they did this way back in January of 2024. Yuki Yamada even had an idea of using Noriko, the female lead of the film, as a key to locating Godzilla due to her now possessing some sort of biological link to the monster. And we all know that at the end of the movie, Godzilla starts to go all reptilicus and regenerate his body, which is similar to what was teased back in 2001 with Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, by the way. Man, the Japanese sure do love their extra long movie titles. Anyways, one thing I need to mention to you guys immediately is the fact that they want Godzilla to fight another monster in this thing, which means that it's going to be a radically different kind of film right off the bat. When you get more than one threat in a Godzilla film, you know, when there's two monsters to contend with, it moves away from being focused on the nuclear warning themes and goes into a direction of more battle-like scenes, more warring scenes of two giant creatures just fighting. We saw this happen immediately after the original film with classics like Godzilla Raids Again, King Kong vs. Godzilla, and Mothra vs. Godzilla. Speaking of which, by the way, I'm going to assume King Kong is definitely not going to be in the movie, because the MonsterVerse is using him a lot these days. More on that later, and who I think could be showing up to fight Godzilla. But anyways, yeah, I think the possibility of this being a sequel is definitely higher than usual, just based off of what the filmmakers have said before in the past. You know, sometimes Japan will just do another Godzilla movie that's completely unrelated to the last film and starting its own continuity from scratch, but I have a feeling that's not what this is going to be at all. With Yamazaki himself saying it would be cool to explore something of a curse that Godzilla left behind on Japan, and Minami Hamabe saying that she wanted to be the one stepping on and crushing people now that she's got some of that Godzilla stuff in her system. And if that's the case, well, then I think we could be in for a very interesting idea, because believe it or not, that sounds like it may be riffing on an abandoned Godzilla sequel idea that was way back in the 1950s. The Bride of Godzilla is an unused script dated for June 17th of 1955, where, get this, a giant woman does battle with Godzilla. Now, there's honestly a lot more to it than that, and it may require an entire video by itself, especially because there's this Christian subplot going on in that script with a robot woman being named Eve, and it's alongside the Hollow Earth ideas that bled into the American movies. I'm not exaggerating at all about any of that, by the way, but I can see where the idea that Hamabe was talking about could come into use in a sequel to Godzilla Minus One. Truthfully, a radioactive giant woman instead of a robot fighting Godzilla sounds like a story inspired by War of the Gargantuous, or maybe even Frankenstein Conquers the World. But in short, there was an abandoned Godzilla sequel from the 1950s where a giant woman, back then in that story it was actually a robot giant woman, was going to fight Godzilla. So I can see an idea like this possibly getting used. As for the monsters that could show up in the story, I think that if a Godzilla Minus Two style movie is going to be made, Anguirus is the clear winner in the popularity contest of what fans want to see, being Godzilla's first official enemy way back in Part 2, Godzilla Raids Again. And look, if he showed back up in, he also showed back up in the Bride of Godzilla script, by the way. Anyways, I can see them bringing him into the modern day for a sequel, especially because he currently isn't being used in the MonsterVerse first for the American Godzilla films we've been getting lately, whereas Mothra and Rodan and King Ghidorah, all of them have shown up in America. And look, personally, I would love it if they brought Anguirus back in a new movie. He hasn't been seen in live action since 2004's Final Wars, and even longer before that, way back in 1974. With that being said, guys, the sequel to Godzilla Minus One, if it is actually going to be in the continuity, is in the works, and I gotta say, it is very exciting times to be a Godzilla fan. I have no idea if they're going to actually go with the idea of a giant woman fighting Godzilla, or if it's going to be a totally different thing with Anguirus showing up. But due to the fact that it's set in the 1940s or maybe even 50s, with the nuclear ideas of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings and the messaging of Godzilla Minus One, I'm going to stress this, I love that movie. That is one of the best Godzilla movies ever made, and the human element, the story that actually went in that was so good, it deserves every ounce of attention and praise it gets. I'm not exaggerating. If you haven't seen it yet, please do yourself a favor and go watch it. The more recent film that came out, Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire, is a completely different kind of experience. That is a super duper silly, borderline comedic monster movie where Godzilla suplexes King Kong off of a pyramid. Still my cup of tea, but a totally different kind of experience. Godzilla Minus One is one of the greatest films in that entire franchise, and it's also one of the most heartwarming and just really good. You gotta watch that film. I'm excited to see the sequel. Anyways, guys, what are your thoughts and opinions on the idea of there even being a sequel to Godzilla Minus One? I still want to see a sequel to Shin Godzilla too, but whatever your own thoughts and opinions happen to be, I'd love to hear all about them in the comments down below. Let me tell you something, brother. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it, and if you'd like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you can be updated when I put out new videos. God bless you all. Christ is King. I hope you all enjoyed your time, and as always, take it easy.